The consumer carbon tax, once a Liberal flagship policy, faces near certain repeal. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's Axe the Tax campaign has turned it into a political lightning rod, blaming it for affordability struggles despite research showing it contributes less than 0.5% to inflation. Liberal leadership contenders like Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland now pledge to replace it with incentives, signaling a dramatic policy shift. While the tax was symbolic, its actual impact was modest. Federal analysis shows it would account for 8 to 9% of emissions reductions by 2030, compared to 23 to 39% from industrial carbon pricing. Critics argue it was never sufficient alone to meet Canada's 2030 or 2050 targets. Canada's industrial carbon pricing system, Output-Based Pricing System, or OBPS, targets large emitters like oil and gas. This system is projected to deliver 53 to 90 million tons of emissions cuts by 2030, far outpacing the consumer levy. Carney's plan aims to tighten OBPS and link it to a carbon border adjustment mechanism to protect competitiveness. Mark Carney proposes replacing the carbon tax with consumer rebates for heat pumps, EVs, and home retrofits, alongside stricter industrial regulations. His plan includes expanding EV charging infrastructure via public-private partnerships, enhancing the Greener Homes Grant for low-income households, phasing out fossil fuels in federal buildings by 2030. Transportation accounts for 22% of Canada's emissions. Policies like the 2035 zero-emission vehicle mandate and investments in public transit are critical. However, Canada's love for gas-guzzling trucks, worst fuel economy globally, complicates progress. Heating buildings is Canada's third-largest emissions source. Mandating electric heat pumps and retrofitting 360,000-plus homes through the Greener Homes initiative could cut energy bills by $500 per month while reducing emissions. Canada aims for a net-zero grid by 2035, with 80% already non-emitting. Expanding wind, solar, and battery storage, paired with strict regulations banning new gas-coal plants, is essential to power EVs and heat pumps. The oil and gas sector contributes 27% of Canada's emissions, with production up 83% since 1990. A proposed emissions cap and eliminating fossil fuel subsidies are contentious but necessary steps. Poilievre's Axe the Tax rhetoric has overshadowed substantive climate debates. Experts warn scrapping the tax without credible alternatives risks missing 2030 targets and alienating international allies. The carbon tax rebate shielded 80% of households from net costs, but poor communication fueled public distrust. Carney's incentives aim to merge affordability with climate action, targeting retrofits and EVs for low-income families. Provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan resist federal policies, while Quebec and BC have their own systems. A flexible, province-specific approach could ease tensions and align regional priorities. Investing in clean tech, e.g. hydrogen, carbon capture, could position Canada as a global leader. The Canada Growth Fund and tax credits for decarbonization projects are key to attracting private capital. Canada's pledge to end international fossil fuel financing by 2023, except in limited cases, aligns with the Paris Agreement. However, loopholes for national security and gas projects risk undermining credibility. Hard regulations, like phasing out coal by 2030 and ICE vehicle bans, are more effective than carbon pricing alone. These measures force systemic change rather than relying on consumer choice. Canada's new 2035 target aims for 50 to 55% emissions, cuts below 2005 levels, requiring aggressive action. Advisory bodies stress that even this may exceed Canada's fair share of the global carbon budget. A proposed national carbon budget would track emissions like household spending, ensuring alignment with 1.5 degrees Celsius goals. This science-backed framework could depoliticize climate action, slow approvals for renewable projects, and opposition from fossil fuel lobbies stall progress. Carney's plan includes permitting reforms to accelerate clean energy projects. Rebates were rebranded as the Canada Carbon Rebate, but deposits were poorly explained, letting critics frame the tax as a burden. Better messaging is vital for future policies. While the EU cut emissions by 25% since 1990, Canada's rose 14%, excluding pandemic drops. Stricter policies abroad highlight Canada's need to catch up. Canada can meet its climate goals, but only with bold, coordinated action. 1. Strengthen industrial carbon pricing and emissions caps. 2. Mandate clean energy transitions in transportation and buildings. 3. Invest in innovation and green jobs. 4. Prioritize provincial collaboration. 5. Communicate policies transparently to rebuild public trust. The carbon tax's demise is a setback, not a death knell. The real test is whether leaders can pivot to policies that marry economic growth with climate urgency.
If you like this little documentary, please subscribe the channel.